Hey guys, this is Ross with Hamilbro Studios, and today we're going to take a brief look at how we accomplished the visual effects for the Lubbock County Tax Assessor's Wait From Home ad that we recently released. But before I get started, I do want to give a shout out to our honorable mentions, because without these resources, this project never would have seen some of the crazy effects that it has seen. So I'm going to just jump right in and try to blow through these quickly. In one corner, we have After Effects Beta with the all-new RotoBrush 2.0. If you don't have it, get it. It's the bomb. It saved me probably 2 extra weeks worth of rotoscoping. We also have Adobe's Mixamo, which is where we sourced the Knight, or the 3D Paladin, who made some appearances in our little film here. And you can also upload your own characters, and they will rig those, and you can have whatever 3D character you want animated. Next, we have Sketchfab, where we sourced nearly all of our 3D models for this. And then finally, mattepaint.com. It's where we got our exterior castle photo for the iPigeon shot, but their rates are like $12 a month. So if you're not using a lot of matte paintings, it's an incredible price. And we've got a subscription, and I plan on keeping it. So in the other corner, aside from the software and website stuff available, we have our amazing tutorial providers. First one is Hashi, aka Action Movie Kid on Twitter. If you follow him there, his stuff's fun, but he's got some incredible tutorials on redgiant.com, and those were a huge source of inspiration for this. And next we have Stu Maschwitz, also with Red Giant, and if you're not familiar with him, watch Star Wars or Sin City, you might see some of his work, but he has some really great walkthroughs of the Red Giant VFX suite, which he was definitely a part in developing those, and that saved me a ton of headache. And I can't forget to mention his book, The DV Rebels Guide. Thanks to that, we got some stolen shots that we probably shouldn't have got, but we got them. And if you're into filmmaking, you need his book. And if you don't buy it, then Stu, in his ridiculous altitude, will look down on you in shame. Seriously, the guy is too tall. Makes me feel insignificant. But then we have Andrew Kramer over at videocopilot.net and his tutorials, and I can't not mention Element 3D, which made all of the 3D work in this possible. And last but certainly not least, Gareth Edwards and his old yet highly relevant After Effects tutorial series available at Effects PhD. And if you don't know who Gareth Edwards is, watch Rogue One or the most recent Godzilla movie. You might see some of his work there. But all of these individuals have had a huge influence on us in our work, and I can honestly say that we wouldn't be able to do any of what we do without their knowledge and expertise. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into this project, and I'm going to assume that you've already seen it at this point, and that you already kind of know what's happened. So if you haven't watched the ad, go ahead and pause. I will put the link to the actual ad below in the description, and let's get going. So the first shot I'm going to look at is going to be the shot where all of our characters get introduced, all of our medieval Renaissance type characters. And the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to kind of just stair step from the raw shot all the way to the finished shot. So this was, there we go, get over here. And this was basically what the shot looked like straight out of camera. And first thing I did was I went into After Effects Beta and use RotoBrush 2.0 to kind of cut out around these guys and insert our Paladin here, so you can see that, he's not in the raw shot, but he is definitely there in that shot. The next thing is just a basic color balance. Here, kind of vignetted the room a little bit to kind of draw focus there. And then finally, this is what the final shot looked like. I used Red Giant film for this, and all of the color grading, all of the finishing was done in After Effects using the Red Giant Magic Bullet suite. So Red Giant film for kind of the final look, and Red Giant's Magic Bullet Colorista 4, I believe, for the color balancing. So the next shot that was kind of a challenge was this shot. We actually shot this out in our dad's shop because, you know, we have a deficit of medieval buildings around here in Lubbock. And so I wasn't actually able to pull a key quite as good as I wanted to, so I used a combination of RotoBrush 2.0 in the After Effects beta and Red Giant's Primat keyer, and was able to key these guys out and maintain their hair. And you can't really see the hair as well here, but that's the shot with them keyed out. Next, we added in the background. This was just a wall. Yeah, a stone wall, I believe, that was available in one of the Element 3D texture packs. I think it was, I can't remember if it was the Motion Design or which 3D pack that came with, but that was courtesy of Element 3D. Then we have our color balance. One of the things that was a little problematic here was that with the light we used an aperture MC, and it added a little too much orange to the skin tones. And then we have the final shot, again, you know, a little more orange pulled out and Magic Bullet film applied here, and all of this was composited using the Red Giant VFX Super Comp, which, if you haven't heard me talk about it, I love it. It's an incredible product, I should say. Now for the reverse shot, this one was kind of interesting. We wanted to take a piece of parchment and have his registration notice put on there, which is it's a state registration notice. So I had to go into Photoshop and do a lot of fixing on it to take off any personal information. And so the first thing, if you see, you know, kind of, you know, just these little X's drawn on there, those were track markers because I was going to use the VFX suite Kingpin tracker, also from Red Giant, to attach the document. So go ahead and show you kind of how this was done. So first step to getting this composited is, you can see all the dots are removed. I used the Red Giant Spot Clone tracker to remove those. And then I used Kingpin tracker to place the document on there. And as you can see, it doesn't look right. Also, his finger kind of obscures, or his finger should obscure it. So the next step was just changing the blending mode and coloring it just a little bit so that it looks like it belongs on the paper, and then used the Kingpin tracker to actually attach that. And then again, we have our color balance to just unify the colors a little bit more. And then we added our Magic Bullet film to give it, I really wanted this to have an older feel to it, so I opted for film, and I think I used some of the Prolostia settings for this, and that added noise, just kind of gave it an old, for me, it felt more like something out of the 90s as opposed to something current. But you can kind of see here how the document stays attached even though he's shaking the parchment, and Kingpin tracker made that way possible. So next we're going to move on, because this shot is pretty much the same as this shot. So moving on to the next shot, if you weren't aware, every medieval peasant was assigned an iMac back in those days. And so one of the problems we had was this iMac, we didn't have a power supply for it since we were just using it as a prop. And so what we ended up doing was we had, since we had no power, we had no screen to light his face, light the keyboard, and so Jacob's holding an Aperture NC set to 6500 right here over the screen. And you can see the yellow tape surrounding the edges of that. So basically, we shot a different shot of this without the light in there, and the light kind of edged the rim of the laptop a little bit. So once I go into that shot, you can see where the tape was painted out. We removed the Mac label and Jacob's hand was taken out. And so that was an interesting challenge. Also, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, or maybe you can't see it, but there was yeah, you can kind of see it there a little bit, but there was a roll of tape that accidentally got left on the table, and so that was also taken out. And so that's our shot with all of the extra elements removed or photoshopped out, if you will. And then we added the screen. I used Red Giant's Kingpin Tracker for that, and also used the RotoBrush 2.0 to cut out around his hand, because his hand does kind of cross over the screen a little bit at some point. And then, composited all that in with Super Comp and gave it a little bit of a glow, kind of tinted the screen blue. And then again, we added film, the Red Giant film overlay, or actually it's a generator, but that just kind of, that was the rug that really tied the room together. So let's look at our next shot, which this was actually the first thing I did on this whole ad. Was I composited this. This was our stock photo from mattpaint.com, excuse me. And as you can tell, they didn't have a lot of smoke detectors or alarms or bars on their windows back in the medieval times, and nor did they have drainage pipes like you can see over by the stairs on the left, and then graffiti. This graffiti wasn't medieval enough for me, so I went into Photoshop, painted all that out, took the bars off the windows, and took the tree out of the top because there's some really weird, I'm not sure what's going on with the tree there, but it looks like it's all kind of in triplicate, but Photoshopped everything out that didn't belong. And from there, we added these 3D elements. So I believe all these came from Sketchfab, including the pigeon, which there's our pigeon right there. And I used Real Smart Motion Blur. Had to do that since this was an OBJ sequence. And then from there, there's the motion blur, really added onto the pigeon a little more so he looks natural, and all this stuff was kind of colored to match the background, the 3D elements were. And then our 2D elements, added this iPigeon sign there on the box, and added a nest in there because, what pigeon wouldn't want to live in a box without a nest? And then added these feathers also flying out to kind of give the illusion that he was really in there. And then we have our final look, just kind of brightened everything up, brought the exposure up, and again used film for this, and added a little bit of jitter to the boxes when the pigeon takes off, which you can kind of see when he takes off and all the feathers flying out, which was fun stuff. And then we have Amicus back at his computer, which we already got. And then this shot, it's very similar to the last one, but I wanted to cover this because we do have the phone in here, which the screen had to be replaced. So again, we had Jacob in there, and this time his hand is on the table, which was, that was a lot of fun to manipulate out, but wasn't a big deal. So we painted all that out, painted the tape off, and you can kind of see where a little bit of the phone screen was actually taken out, as well as Amicus's hand, so I could cleanly paint out that tabletop. And then we added the screens back in, and so again, using Kingpin Tracker on both of these, the computer screen and the phone screen, I was able to actually take some of the elements using the icons on the screen of the phone and motion track this on, and his hand was cut out with RotoBrush 2.0. And we have our color balance, and finally the final color of the shot, and we just brought in a window that kind of pops up so you can see what he sees on his screen, and also these are almost verbatim the notifications you would get from the county's office whenever you sign up. So yeah, peasants and iPhones, who doesn't dig it? So moving on, we're gonna go to this shot where Amicus enters. This is the raw shot. And the idea from the beginning was to have Kobe, who is our evil prince wizard here, summoning fire out of boredom, and he doesn't like to be disturbed. And so this was the raw shot, and we turn that off and we get the fire effects kind of on his face. You get the glowing there. See him summon the fire and it makes his face glow. And then from there we added the paladin in, which he's in the background arguing about his registration. A lot of people don't know this, but he let his registration lapse, and they're telling him that he needs to get new insurance on his horse before he can joust again, and he's not very happy about that. But he, but used the After Effects RotoBrush 2.0 again to get that, and all of this again was composited with Super Comp. Any shot through here that has any extra elements layered in, that was done 100% using Super Comp. And we have our color balance, which just kind of unifies things and adds a little bit of a vignette. And then we have our final. And oh yes, we can't forget the glowing eyes. That was also something that came over from, it was a free set from Red Giant around Halloween of last year, maybe 2019, but wanted his eyes to glow in anger, so we were able to do that. And so now let's jump on over. This was our shot of Amicus exiting, and our orator, that's the word I'm looking for, he was setting this up for the other things that people would rather be doing. So if we see here, just this shot of everybody almost dying from boredom, but that was the raw shot, and we go in and the paladin was added. And one of the things that I haven't mentioned about Super Comp, which is super dope, is they have a color matching feature now that you can not only match a foreground element to the background colors, but you can also set it to the color space of the camera you were shooting in. So we shot all of this on Blackmagic Pocket 4K and 6K cameras. And I also need to give a shout out to Josh Dansby, aka Shut Up Dansby, aka SpongeBob Dance Pants. He provided us with a 3D camera, or a 360 camera, pardon me. And so anytime the paladin was in the shot, interior-wise, we were actually able to get 360 photos so that the paladin is actually reflecting the environment that he's in, and we couldn't have done that without the old Dansby pants. And so we got that. We have our color balance here. And then this next one, I did this on every shot, but this one was the most noticeable. Basically, I wanted to knock down the ceiling a little bit as far as the lights go. So I did add a bit of a vignette to kind of highlight our orator here and also highlight Amicus leaving in the background. And then again, our final color with film, red giant film. Then we get into our other things. This was all practical. That's a real bow, that's a real arrow, that's a real me, and all of my acting prowess. And not gonna lie, we stole the idea for this shot from the Kevin Costner Robin Hood, because who doesn't like a cool slow motion arrow shot? And yes, I was shooting at a target and my aim was actually pretty good. And so we have the raw shot here. So as you can see, it's just the top of Jacob's head up against a tree, nothing else there. Turn that off and we get our 3D elements. So we start off, we have the apple here, that's part of the food pack in Element 3D, and we just used a basic outside 3D matte for that, and I just did a little bit of dirtying up around the bottom of the apple to kind of make it look more like it's sitting in his hair. And that arrow is literally an extruded cylinder in Element 3D with a wood texture on it, and I just used a null with an expression to, kind of make it vibrate, and you can hear the boing it makes when it hits. Kind of wanted to go cartoony there. And from there, let me see, what else did we add? Oh, yes. So when the arrow impacts, if you watch wood chips come out of the tree, not exactly realistic, but it's kind of funny, so we added that to kind of help integrate. Then we have our color balance, just making everything nice and pretty. And then the final look of the shot, we wanted this to feel a little more evening, or later in the day, so it hasn't gone pink or purple like we would in the evening, but it's definitely a little warmer. Then we have this shot of Jacob trying to hold still, and we were completely safe with this. Nobody was in the line of fire when any actual arrows were being used. So as you can see, we do have Jacob against the tree. He does have a microphone on, which I used Spot Clone Tracker to kind of take that out, and ended up having to blend that a little better for the final. So get that one. And then added the apple on his head, and I used the After Effects camera tracker to actually track his head so that the apple would move while he's moving, so that was fun. And actually something funny with the apple, to get the apple to blend with the way his hair is sticking up, I actually used a patch of grass out of the pack that just comes with Element 3D, and I used that as a matte shadow to kind of cut out the bottom of the apple and make it look like it's sitting behind his hair, standing up there. Next, we added the arrows, which on these, that was kind of fun. We took this plate, and you can kind of see, I think it was Jacob on this one, but he's just moving the arrow into different spots, and we took several stills from that, moved them over into Photoshop and cut them out so that we could place them around Jacob. And then I just took a solid, kind of matched it to the color of the tree, and actually made arrow holes so that you can kind of see a point of contact there with the arrows on the tree. And then we have our color balance, very basic. And then we have the look of the final shot, just that similar gold color there. And then this last one was a lot of fun. It's the one where, I attempt to take another shot. And again, we were completely safe with this. As you can see, I am not in this shot, and I'm not pointing an arrow at Jacob's face, although he may have deserved it. But so we have that shot. And then we have my shot, and you can see the edges kind of cut out there, and that's where we laid in Jacob's underneath it. And you can see those two composited together. Next, we added our 3D elements, which again, the apple on top of Jacob's head and our free archery lessons sign, so that, so this kind of makes a little more sense. Next, I had to do the arrows in 3 layers. These are the arrows that are kind of in the background. They're on the other side of Jacob. Next layer was the arrows that are between his torso and his right arm. Finally, we have a couple of arrows on the outside there on more of the foreground. Then we have our color balance again, and then our final look of the shot. I can show you here again how we created all of the arrows. We didn't have that many arrows, and that was actually all just one arrow that was placed on the tree. So you can see me moving it around, and again, it was the same thing, just photoshopped myself out and isolated those arrows. So now we can move on to the last shot. And we start off, we have our orator and our deputy, and she's kicking him out. We have a lot of background motion, and that made this very difficult to track because the reflectivity of the floor, all the motion here made this, it was a pain, honestly, to get the camera to track, but I couldn't do it without my paladin. So we added him in, and originally he was just going to be kind of sitting there looking around, wondering what's up, and ended up opting for him just sitting there playing air drums. And again, I used the RotoBrush 2.0 and After Effects Beta to cut her out, actually cut both of them out in front of the paladin, and it did an exceptional job of that. And that gives us our color balance. Nothing special, but just a little bit of a vignette. And then we have the final look of our shot, again, all done with Magic Bullet film. And that concludes all of the VFX shots. And, hopefully the takeaway from this is there's a lot of things you can do if you just put in the time to learn, or if you are on the client side of this, we at Hamel Bros can give you a lot of bang for your buck and do it effectively and do it well. So we appreciate you checking this out, and we will see you next time.